You're watching Infinite Spaghetti, live on location. This is Infinite Spaghetti, a guided tour of the cosplay and creative archives, with your host, Ethan Minsker. Part of the Project Nerd Podcast Network. To give a little context, this episode is going to focus on all of the art-related events I did over the fall, doing art fairs and residencies.
I'm Ted Riederer, the curator of New York, I Love You But You're Bringing Me Down, works by Ethan Minsker. We are at the Spring Break Art Fair on Madison Avenue in New York City. I am the de facto curator of this booth. The way Spring Break works is they encourage curators to set up shows with artists. It operates a little bit differently than the other fairs, the other art fairs, which are more gallery-centered. And I think you can feel the energy. There's a lot of exciting stuff happening here. Ethan and I have been friends since about 1985, 86. And we've collaborated over the course of 2.5 decades on numerous projects. And Ethan approached me if I would team up with him for this presentation at Spring Break. And I was very happy to. So Ethan had been making these. The way I describe it is he's willing the romantic version of New York that he experienced when he first moved here into existence by making these objects. He'd made them for props and for his films and for little kind of crafting projects. And when we discussed doing a bigger show at the gallery where I used to work, we talked about replicating the East Village like the Queens Museum diorama of New York. So that's kind of the genesis of this work. But Ethan completely ran with it, went big and colorful, and they're just fantastic, and people are really responding to them. I think there's a unpretentious quality, like honesty to these that people get intuitively, and I've had a ton of wonderful conversations about the work, which is fantastic.
I'm your host, Ethan Minsker. Today we're on Governor's Island, on the tip of Manhattan in New York City. This is part of a residency by the Four Heads Group. So we're going to meet the artist, find out what it's like to do a residency here, in which is virtually like a small town in the middle of a giant city. Let's check it out.
My name's Santina Amato. I'm originally from Melbourne in Australia, but I've been in the States for 10 years. I'm a visual artist. I actually use bread dough in a lot of my work. This is the longest actually residency I've had. It's been 7 months in total, and it allowed me to have a space for the first time since grad school. My work just wanted to literally expand. So I'm making my largest sculptures to date. It's kind of taking from my dough work and what the themes and ideas that are going around with that. I'm using new materials, plaster cloth and homemade air dry clay. And they're huge, as big as me. And they're heavy, and Governor's Island with Four Heads is kind of like a unique space because we're on an island. So it's kind of completely impractical, but that's what making art is, I feel.
My name is Cynthia Ruse. I'm an artist. I work with Four Heads in organizing some of their programming. I work mostly with installation. I like to design things that fill a room, but each piece also functions on its own. It's almost pages of a book, so they go together, but they can also be taken apart.
My name is Shiri Mordecai. I paint on paper. I use inks or watercolors. I don't know what it is, but I tap into certain things. They're not really conscious, but they always have to do with some kind of impressions, existence. Here at Governor's Island Air Residency, I am making flat paintings on paper because I have so much wall space. and so much space and floor space that I'm super happy about, because I feel like I can fly all over the room and just go to different angles and work on multiple pieces and kind of be free to make a mess. The more space, the better. Watercolors, I carry buckets from the other side of the island and I splash them, and then I come back and it sort of dries the next day, and it's just nice to have tons of space and never think about any of that, and I get surprises that way with my work.
Hi, I'm Margaret Rolicky. I'm an artist. I mostly do installation and printmaking. I was able to create 2 outdoor pieces as well as doing work inside my studio space. Outdoors, I created a piece called Shelled. It's composed of spent shotgun shells. Very colorful, and a lot of people do not realize what it's made of until they get closer to it. I actually lived near Sandy Hook during the terrible shooting and have been affected by gun violence, and I try to make pieces that engage the viewer in some manner with the subject, but I don't tell them how to think. I basically want to just start a conversation on gun control, gun violence, and that kind of thing. So I built this piece here, and I built it somewhere else and then kind of put it together here on the lawn outside the Colonel's Row. So that piece is there. It changes during the day. As the sun moves around it, you can actually look inside, and there's mirrors and caution tape, because I felt like in some ways it's so pretty that people don't completely get it, and they kind of like, oh, look at that pretty house, and then they see that it's made of these shells. They were all shot at a shooting range. An old neighbor of mine also gave me those, and I feel like a lot of times they're just thrown out and are like an environmental waste. In my studio here, I have a bunch of prints. I kind of have done a lot of cyanotypes and monoprints, and then I draw on them or collage on them. I sometimes use the paper targets that I have actually found at antique stores, or you can buy them at Walmart, and they're just very strange. Like, here's a kid with a backpack, let's try to shoot him, you know? I had a bunch of toy Statue of Liberties that I have painted and added guns to, added weird little things to them, and I was gonna do a wall installation, but these walls are old and hard to like nail into, so I've been like kind of setting up these little figures in different spots. Mostly they're in my building now, but I intend to put them throughout the island and kind of play with this idea of liberty and what the statue means.
My name is Erin Turner, and I'm an artist. I am working on a new series of work that is about monuments and kind of what types of monuments we're tearing down and what I believe should be the monuments that we honor and respect, which takes me directly to landscape. I'm very interested in landscape development and keeping the wild wild. So a lot of the work that I do is about the natural world and biodiversity and questions of human intimacy with the landscape and my own intimacy with those wild spaces. I am working right now on a series of 3 right now, paper mache sculptures. But I use photography a lot as more of a medium. So a lot of the photography that I take becomes, a part of a sculptural facade. I do a lot of large-scale sculptural installations. I also a distant relationship with painting, and so I've kind of revisited painting.
My name is Henry Chung. I work in mixed media using found photographs, often dealing with those notions of identity, anonymity, memory, and the elusive quality of memory. A quality of found photographs that it tugs at you with a sense of nostalgia that may or may not really exist for you. There's that quality about like a shared memory, a shared sense of nostalgia. So those are the kinds of things I was trying to explore. and that I'm looking at what I think is someone's memory, but they really aren't. It's just a bunch of, areas of black and white. And so I started thinking about, how can I take that as a concept and save that somehow? And so I was trying to take this idea of the photograph as the representation of memory and store that solely in a computer chip, so that the art becomes just really ethereal. It becomes memory itself. And I went on to engineer this little device that you load it up with a version of this photograph. And then if I wanted to see what that was, or if anyone who owned this piece of artwork wanted to see what it was, they'll put a little piece of Polaroid film in there, press the button, it goes bzz, and then it would render one of these, a Polaroid. And these would be like the representation of that memory, which leads me to this series here, which I call Absence. But your brain usually fills in everything in between. So your memory is formed not by actual things that you remember, but a few key points, and then everything is filled in between. But yet, as you step back, you start seeing, oh wait, there's an eyebrow, and obviously you see, a nose and eyes is easy to see, and then you see all of a sudden teeth on her portrait, on her face. It's like, how do we get teeth there? Because if you look at it, there's basically 4 dots. For me, that's like a metaphor of how your brain fills things in. So these are, memories that often are filled in, and it's kind of represented in this way where your brain is actually filling in most of the detail for you, because there really is nothing there, that aren't even, close to resembling an eyebrow. But yet when you pull back, you do see eyebrows. These are rendered in punched paper, so it's holes. It's a subtractive process. It reinforces notions of absence. So it's actually the absence of the paper that is giving this illusion of depth and of tonality. I'm trying to remember dreams, where as you're grasping at the dream, and these memories are there, they are real, and they're real in your head, and you think about them, and in a split second they're gone, and you've lost it, and you can't remember it, and it's so odd, and you feel that, but this was in my head, I was thinking about it less than a microsecond ago. And as I was grasping at it, it slips away and it's gone forever.
Let's go meet Jack Robinson. He's one of the founding members of Foreheads.
So Foreheads is an arts nonprofit. It was founded in 2008, basically by a bunch of artists that just wanted to make more opportunities for other artists than ourselves. We had our first art fair in 2008, 56 artists, I believe, on Governor's Island. Usually do about 100 artists a year, and then we moved into these wonderful spaces on Colonel's Row. So we have a very easy application for the art fair. We don't care about where you went to school, we don't care about where you've shown, how much your work sells for, it doesn't really matter. We just care about the work. All the jurors are artists, because we're a nonprofit, able to do work that is unsellable. That's not the way we make our money, is selling art. We make the money by writing grants. In 2010, we expanded to do education, and we actually have a really cool education program this year. Hostas, a CUNY school up in the Bronx, some of their students took over one floor of one of our buildings to do really quite intensive animation, stop action animation.
Hey, my name is Carlos Thompson. I am an animator, and I'm working on the island on a project about 5 interviews with stop motion animation and mixed media animation as well. And they combine animation students with digital design students so that we can actually combine both styles and use the skills of everyone. And in the case that we're doing right now, we pick mixed media because some students are really good at digital animation, and using softwares like After Effects, they ask us to create small sets and just build the sets and build the puppets to animate 2 interviews with stop motion animation. We have learned, and we just have improved a lot in our skills just by using and just improvising and trying to find the best way to use materials that are not exactly meant to be art pieces.
So then we also have our residency arm that started in 2010. And what we would do is during the first session of the year, the island split up into 2 sessions. Our first session usually is one building with 20 artists in residence or so, right around there. And then in late fall, we would get a lot more space and do a full-scale art fair with 100 artists and about 40,000 visitors, indoor, outdoor.
Now, I've done the art fair before here, and I found it to be a really fun, good experience meeting the public at large So you get all kinds of people coming through. Some are here specifically for the art shows, some are here just to hang out and enjoy the island, and then they come in on through your room and you're making all sorts of new connections.
So we have 34 artists in 7 buildings on the island.
This residency at Governor's Island to me is that it's a blank space. A lot of artists work in really cluttered spaces, so to be able to come into an empty space and only bring in things that you want is really a wonderful experience. You get to be surrounded by so many really fantastic artists, and people are normally just so generous with their time discussing your work, their work.
The island is amazing because it's just nice because you don't feel like you're working alone. It's like spirits in the buildings and in the place. So it feels very sacred.
One of the really great things about these buildings is that the rooms are so beautiful, and they could be, chipping paint or all kinds of other characteristics. They're very old houses, they've been lived in. The spaces themselves interact with the work, and that's another unique aspect of exhibiting here. You can have something planned out, and then when you bring it out here, it might not look the way that you thought it was going to look because the space is interacting.
They're not fixed up, they're what they are, and they have a history to them, and I feel like I want to get that history kind of into my pieces in some manner.
Kind of treat the residency like camping. You have to bring everything that you're going to use because there's not a ton of resources on the island. Prepare for water and meals and all of those things. I have this hermit tendency, and so also being in a residency kind of forces me to be social with other artists, which is amazing. And it's something that I love to do, but I don't necessarily, it's not my first, impetus.
Obviously the space to do it is just invaluable. Anyone who lives in New York knows that space is at premium. My studio is shared and it's small. Actually it's bigger than this room, but it's just filled with stuff and I share it, and so there's no space to be able to do things like construct this, build this. Where I just need lots of floor space or empty space that I can sit with equipment and materials and metal and wood and work through these ideas or building and engineering this thing. The dedicated time. You are made to do something, you're more likely to do it. The having place in this residency kind of makes me obligated to come here to work on my stuff. So there's no excuse. It's I have the space. I have someone who had entrusted me with the space to produce artwork, and I feel that is a duty for me to come here, and that kind of it forces me to do more of what I like to do.
The artwork I'm doing here is related to a show called New York, I Love You, But You're Bringing Me Down. So it's water towers, it's buildings, wheat paste, it's a little bit of everything. I like to just follow whatever I'm into at the moment. And in the moment, I'm into doing sort of a street art mixes with contemporary gallery art. It's just like they're taking over a home. It's a big vacant space. You really can convert it into anything that you want. And that's what's amazing about the Four Heads group, is they're giving opportunities to artists. I think you have to contemplate the reasons that you want to do a residency. You get to meet other artists, you get to experiment in a location that's totally unique.
My name is Tim Fight. I'm an artist, musician. I live in New York City, and I come to Governor's Island to draw on the walls. This year I drew in the color blue. I started right here on this wall and then worked my way around the room. Some of those questions are about the origins of a hyper-surveillance society. Thinking about how dogs may have been a proto-Alexa, keeping tabs on their owners. Would you rather shovel shit or shovel stars into the sky? And I decided on stars into the sky. It's a big old, beautiful mess. Some of the things move too, that's pretty cool. This painting goes like this. You can look under it, and it's real terrible under there. That's me getting shit on and eaten at the same time by the same three-headed dog. The medium and how you do all this. The first medium that you need is a big old abandoned house. That was provided by Four Heads, is a big old abandoned brain. Markers that aren't abandoned, they're inhabited by acrylic-based inks. I usually do things in black and white, but during the pandemic I switched to blue and white because I didn't want to taint my favorite pair with the sadness I was feeling during the pandemic. And work my way around the room with the biggest markers, then I work my way around the room with the medium markers, then I work my way around the room with the small markers, which seems a little like a weird way to do it, just based on size, but size matters.
I'm Tina Kindermann. I'm an artist initially from West Berlin in Germany. I've lived on the Lower East Side in New York for the past 30 years. The most recent body of work is large paintings based on small vintage dolls that I photograph and kind of dramatic lighting, and they look creepy, and to me they represent what is universal about us humans in regards to our fragility, our vulnerability, because they age and change, and they have been loved, but they're also sometimes very weird looking. And I paint those dolls on kosher craft paper. That's a source that I found initially in the street in Williamsburg, outside of the Schnur Matze bakery. And it's a fabulous paper that can just withstand a lot of paint. And it was also a free source, that's also important to me, to work with materials that are recycled, that can get recycled. What I've been experimenting with lately is I've been painting these small dolls way bigger than they are. So these dolls that are in the studio right now, they almost go all the way up to the ceiling. They're 9 feet or something like that. And they kind of tower over you and look at you in this menacing, weird way. Create an installation that is a meditation on how children turn into violent adults. Because this is something that's been very puzzling to me. How do innocent little children turn into violent, hating, racist, sexist people? The dolls that I have painted, there is one that is just burning down the world with a flamethrower. But he looks very innocent, and one of his eyes is a little bit out of whack, but he's still very cute. And then there is one very enthusiastic looking doll based on a Shirley Temple doll. And to me, she has that hysterical look of a Trump supporter. So I put a chastity belt on her because she's saving herself. And then there's one that is holding a black baby doll that is broken, and he's very troubled looking. When I'm looking for these vintage dolls, it's actually very hard to find dolls that are not white, that are not caricatures. So it became a little bit also a meditation on whiteness and white violence.
My name is Kyle LUNTZ. I'm a sound artist in residence at Four Heads, where I built my installation that I call Moving Through Time. And that installation uses 4 ultrasonic sensors to control 4 different audio channels that are wired into these springs that are stretched across the room, attached to drum heads, and as you move through the room, you control the playback of these 4 audio tracks. So by holding still, you can freeze a moment
If you walk backwards, it will play it backwards. If you walk forwards, it'll play it forwards. The idea behind it was the way that we perceive time is not linear and it is not consistent in the way that we move forward or look back on memory. I guess I was thinking about it a lot in the last year when time felt like it was moving really fast and really slow at the same time. So I wanted to create an audio installation that felt like it could relate to our perception of how time is moving.
My name is GREGG EMERY. I am a painter. I sketch people all the time too, but I'm primarily a gestural abstract painter, minimal abstract painter. I tend to use, at least for the past 25 years, simple shapes and see what I can come up with within that kind of minimalist choice. I layer paint using squeegees and pieces of wood, sometimes a little brushwork as well. I mostly work on the ground, so I use the circle and then a sweep across that sort of contradicts. To me, it reveals a lot of marks that you wouldn't have seen unless the two kind of came together. And I've been playing with that. One of my rules is if it's interesting to me and it keeps revealing kind of a magical, sort of interesting surprise, aha moments, then I'll keep playing with it. And so it's evolved slowly, but I've pretty much stuck with that mode of working. Colors come from things I see. That can be a rusted dumpster on 96th Street, ripped paint on a subway car, but I tend to collect all those colors, either with paint swatches or even just a quick photo, and then I use that to kind of reinvigorate my own color palette, distill the moments of the day into these, what I call a meditation or athletic event or something kind of in between.
Brushed forever on the skin of my guitar.
Being able to have this opportunity is amazing because until now and before this kind of program, I have not been part of something so big. This is like the biggest project I've done, and if it wasn't because of Forehead inviting me over and inviting the whole group over, I don't think I would have been able to meet all the people that I have been able to meet and learn the skills that I have been able to learn and just improve itself. And it is amazing because some of the artists that are here and part of the project and of the program of this year, they have gone out of their way to teach us different skills that they use in their own areas. And I'm pretty sure that if it wasn't because of this, I don't think we would have been capable of doing what we are doing.
Now a little bit about this island. This was a military base. There were batteries that would protect the harbor, and this was one of them. It was a prison during the Civil War, one of the fortresses. So it had a long history of military use. Then it became a university for the Coast Guard. Now it's decommissioned and it's open to the public.
It's a magic island. This military history, like throughout its colonial history, has been a military installation because it's right at the mouth of the harbor, that we can switch this around to art and culture, and with all the other organizations on the island. I mean, there's I think probably 30, 40 cultural organizations on the island this year. We are lucky to have a space that's not just a white box. It's that you have a room, and it's an interesting room with the chipping paint and all kinds of stuff like that. So use the space to your advantage. I mean, people, even like we have people in kitchens, being that these are all historic houses that people used to live in, like it has the stuff that people used to live in, a kitchen, a living room, a dining room, that kind of thing.
People like us, we know that there are chains made of many things.
This place and working with Foreheads will be an unique experience. This is not something that you're gonna have or experience in the city somewhere else. Once you get here, it's like you escape the city noise and the city shows a stressful life. And over here, it's like you're going to the countryside and you're more relaxed, and it actually gives you a little bit more inspiration or just peacefulness to create new pieces and probably give you more inspiration that you might be getting over there in the city.
The submission process begins in around December. We have our application on the foreheads.org website. In order to receive a residency, you need to have shown with us in the past in the art fair.
I love everybody that works here and the whole energy. It's free. It's not institutionalized, and I like that because that energy is like, it affects you.
I think this is an amazing opportunity because there's hardly anything like this.
When you take the boat and you land here, it's like, it feels like you're leaving everything else behind. First of all, it freaking changed my life. I meet so many interesting people here.
Out of all the things that I've ever done with my art, Governor's Island has been the most influential on my work. It's an amazing place to be, and you should definitely apply.
I want to thank everyone at Foreheads. An amazing, positive experience. Incredibly grateful and thankful for Foreheads for accepting my application.
I definitely encourage everyone to apply to the art fair because there's good odds at getting a space here because there are a lot of rooms and a lot of space. I just want to say thanks to Foreheads. They're a really great artist-run organisation, and I really appreciate the diversity in the art practices of artists that they embrace. Everyone has a place at Foreheads.
Yeah, I would recommend it. Thank you, Foreheads.
Foreheads.org. Any information, I would probably get it from Instagram. Foreheads NYC.
One thing leads to another.
The process I do is I make these templates.
YAI Arts.
And I'd like to say hello to some of my abstract.
A studio for artists with intellectual and developmental disabilities, based here in New York City. I was asked to give a presentation on how I make my buildings.
Now again, this is industrial wallpaper adhesive. Industrial wallpaper.
At the Spring Break Art Show, the East Village Community Fridge asked me to do artwork to cover their fridge. Then while I was out on my residency, I did the artwork that I used to wheat paste over the fridge. And that's why I always say it's like a lottery ticket when it comes to your own creativity. The more things you put out there, the better you spread your bet. So keep on working and keep on trying, and one thing will lead to another.
They show up against your chrome walls with their black silk shadows of velvet next to the old
Video, Ethan Minsker. Production assistant, Jackson Mooney. Spring Break music by The Hard Nips. All the rest of the music by Joe Reyna and Dahlia. Thank you for watching Infinite Spaghetti. If you like the show, please share, comment, subscribe, rate, review. Shows like this only exist with the constant support of its viewing audience. For great cosplay content and amazing podcast, head over to projectnerd.com. That's project-nerd.com.